Hello, we'd like to welcome you now to the third chapter of the book of Malachi, and it continues, and we will read the Greek. Idou ex apostello ton angelomou, ostis etimasi odon proprosopou mu, ke exaifni sexies ton neon avtu, Kyrios on imis zitite, ke o angelos tis diathekis on imis thelete, Idou, erkete, legi Kyrios pantokrator. Behold, I send out. Ex apostello, we have ex is the derivative for sending, and stello, an apostle, one sent out. Ex apostello. The angelon, angel, is the direct transliteration, and I use messenger when it's not obvious that it's an angelic being. We know this is a messenger. It goes in and talks about this messenger of the covenant later down here, who shall prepare the way, the odon. We have a cathode, a current, we have a current, pro, before my face. And suddenly the Lord, Kyrios, one whom you seek, shall suddenly come into his temple. And the messenger of the covenant, even the messenger of the covenant, whom you want, the angelos here, whom you want, the messenger of the covenant, behold, he comes, legi Kyrios pantokrator. The messenger, this verse in Malachi is very similar to Exodus 23:20. If you'd open up to Exodus 23:20, you'll see it says, and behold, I send my messenger before your face, that he may guard you in the way, that he may bring you into the land which I prepared for you. And then in Matthew 11:10, it says, for this it is concerning of whom it has been written, behold, I send my messenger before your face, who shall carefully prepare your way before you. The quotations aren't exact, but the New Testament also outside of 11:10 has the same thing in Mark 1:2 and Luke 7:27. All three agree, but Malachi is not completely identical, and neither is Exodus 23:20. But they're talking about this messenger. And then in verse 17, Matthew 17:10 and 11, it says, and his disciples asked him, saying, why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? And Jesus answering said to them, Elijah indeed comes first, and shall restore all things. And I say to you that Elijah already came, and they did not recognize him, but they did to him as much as they wanted. And there's talking about John the Baptist. So also the Son of Man is about to suffer by them. Then the disciples perceived that concerning John the Baptist, he spoke to them. So this is that famous verse in Malachi where it talks about this messenger of the covenant. And what covenant is he talking about? There are covenants throughout the Bible, many covenants. Covenant between Abraham, God and Abraham, and Isaac, Joshua, Nahash, the city of Jabesh Gilead, David. Many covenants are in the Bible. But it's talking here, I think, of the new covenant, and mentions this new covenant many places in the New Testament. In Matthew 26:28, I'll read just one, and then I'll give you the list of the other ones, and you can look them up. And it says, for this is my blood, the blood of the new covenant, the kainis diathekis. You can see right up here, the diathekis is the same exact word in the Greek Old Testament, the covenant. And the blood of the new covenant, the one for many, being poured out for a release of sins. It also appears in about this new covenant in Mark 14:24, in Luke 22:20, and 1 Corinthians 11:25. 2 Corinthians 3, 4 to 6, Galatians 4:24, Hebrews has a lot about this covenant, goes into detail in the new covenant, Hebrews 7:22, 8:6, 9:15, 10:16 to 18, and Hebrews 12:24. All of those are talking about this new covenant. We'll be going into this new covenant when we get to these places. But right here it's a precursor of that, what's going to happen with that new covenant, that suddenly you're going to seek the Lord and he's going to be in the temple, and Jesus was in the temple. And John the Baptist was telling the people, the precursor. In verse 2 it continues, Ke tis ipomeni imeran isodhu avtu, etis ipostisate enti optasia avtu, vioti avtos isporevite os pir honevtiriu, ke os poa plinonton. And who will endure the day, the emeron, we have ephemeral, with the day of his entrance? Or who shall stand at his aptasia? We have a Greek derivative is optic, at his apparition of seeing him. Who's going to be able to stand? People fell in front of the face of Jesus when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he said that who he was. They fell backwards on the ground. He couldn't stand. Who's going to endure the day of his entrance? For he enters as fire of a foundry furnace. God is fire, light, and Jesus and fire and light is talks about that quite a bit in the New Testament. And the fire of the Holy Spirit was given little tongues of fire on their head. And as lye of one washing, it talks about him washing sins and being whiter than snow, sins being when you're cleansed. And that's what it's all talking about here. It's almost it is a prophecy of, I believe, of the Lord. In verse 3 it continues, Ke katheite honevon, ke katharizon, os to argirion ke katharisi tus ius levi, ke hii aftus osperto crision ke os to argirion ke esonte to kyrio prosagontes thesias enti vicia sini. And he shall sit as one casting in a furnace, and as one cleansing as it were silver. The katharizon, cathartic, is an English derivative of cleansing. Argirion, Argentina, silver, it's country of silver. Again, cathar, and he shall cleanse the sons of Levi, and he shall pour them as the gold, the chrysion, the chrysanthemum is a golden flower, and as the argirion. And they will be to the Lord, Kyrio, the Kyrieleison, derivative, one's bringing sacrifices in righteousness. And Jesus came to cleanse people from their sins and to bring them to God and to be the mediator. In verse 4 it continues, Ke aresi to Kyrio thesia, Iuda ke Jerusalem, kathos e imere tu Ionos, ke kathos ta eti ta emprosthan. And 1, the sacrifice, 2, of Judah, 3, and Jerusalem and Judah, transliterations, shall please the Lord. As in the days, imere, ephemeral, of the Ionos, eon, and as the years before. So when this messenger of the covenant comes and the Lord, things are going to change. And I believe it's talking about here in a future time when Jesus returns. It mentions that in many places in Revelations, and Jesus talks about returning, the epiphany of the Lord. In 3:5 it continues, K prosaxo prosimas increasi, K esonte martis takis epi tas pharmacus, K epi tus micus. Now he's changing the subject here, and he's coming, which I see as a future time, as a judge. He's coming in judgment. Pros, to, you increasi. We have crisis, a point of apex of a decision to be made, and a crisis. And I will be a quick witness. Takis, we have a tachometer, an instrument that measures velocity. A martis, a martyr, a witness, as we mentioned earlier. Against the administrator of potions, the pharmacus, the pharmacology. It's not saying here the pharmacist at their local Walmart or store is a administrator of potions, but the potions that they were administering were more of psychotic drugs, more or less, that could cause a person or tell a person of the future, and witches, like you hear about them in the Middle Ages, and they administered potions that people would take for certain things in their life that they wanted to get rid of or deal with. If a person had problems with childbirth, and they took these potions that they were given. And so these administrators of potions, well, I see a lot of these as things that are going on today. We are given all kinds of psychotic drugs, and it's on the television almost every night. And then there are the illegal drugs that are given by drug pushers, and people are taking them by the millions. It's the new hobby in the United States, it seems. And he'll be a witness against adulterers. And again, we have adultery going on today. It's people aren't even being married anymore, so I suppose adultery is going to be out, because if you don't have marriage, then how can you have adultery? But you do have fornication, but he's against the adulterers. And it continues, against epi tus omniontas to onomati mu epi psevdi, and against the one swearing by an oath in my name for a lie. The onomati, we have a onomatopoeia, the nom, name. The one swearing by an oath for a lie. Psevdi, pseudo is the English derivative. Well, I don't know if they're even swearing by an oath to the Lord anymore. We used to have Bibles. People would put their hands on and swear to an oath, and then they would lie by putting their hands on this Bible, and now they're not even swearing in his name. So that's how far away we're getting. Okay, epitus aposteruntas misthon misthotu, and against the ones depriving a wage of a hireling. Well, you have all kinds of corruption as far as paying wages and trying to deprive people of a fair wage, and companies hiring people part-time instead of full-time so they don't have to give them any benefits and so forth. K katadina stevontas hieras, tyrannizing over widows. A kata is against, and we have that's a typical prefix in English. And the dynastev, the dynasty, power, tyrannizing over, taking power over the widow, and the ones smiting orphans. Orphanus is a direct transliteration. One smiting orphans. And you see, back in the old days, in the England, with Dickens and his Oliver Twist and David Copperfield, and how these orphans were treated, and treated really badly throughout history. But today, orphans are all over. There's single family marriages. There were single parent with raising these children, and all kinds of problems with fathers-in-laws and mothers-in-laws and striking the children, and you read about child beatings and things that are horrible than that on the news left and right. And tous eklinontas krisin proselytu, and the ones turning aside, eklinontas, ek is away from, and clean, we have incline, so turning aside, ek, a krisin, a right judgment, crisis, we mentioned that a little bit earlier, of a proselytu, a foreigner that was changed over to become Jewish-like, that was obeying the laws, but they weren't given the full rights of the native-born Jews, and they were treated as second-class citizens. And today we have many people that are in the United States, many of them illegal, and big problems with the foreigner coming in and the rights of the foreigners. It's all these things were happening then, and they're happening today. It's pretty interesting. Ke tous mi phovumenus me, legi Kyrios, pantokrator. Even they are the ones not fearing, phovo, phobia. This is the preposition, fearing me, same, legi Kyrios, pantokrator. Then 3:6. Dioti ego Kyrios o theosimon, uk iliome. For I, ego, the ego, I am the Lord your God. Theos, theology, I change not. God does not change, though. These people are doing all these things. In verse 7 it continues, Ke imis ii Yaakov, uk apekeste apo ton amortion ton pateron imon. Exaklinate apo nomi mamu, ke uk ephilaxate, epistrepsate pros me, ke epistraphison pros imas, legi Kyrios pantokrator, ke ipate intini epistrepsomen. But you, sons of Jacob, Jacob, are not kept at a distance, apo from apocentric, from the center, from the amartian, the sins of your pateron, the paternal, derivative of your sins of your father. Now he's getting direct against Israel rather than a general condition, which could have been today, but now he's getting to come right against Israel and specifics with Israel. You turned aside, exaklinate, again we had that word earlier, ex and then incline, the two derivatives, from aponomima, from my laws, and you guarded not, aphilaxa, a prophylactic, something that guards, the philax, a guard. Return pros me, to me, pros and me are English derivatives, and I shall be turned towards you, says Kyrios pantokrator. So turning to God, anybody can turn to God. We all have that available to us, and all we have to do is reach out. He's right there. But turning is not just turning around in a circle, but it's changing our actions, the things that we do towards God also. But they had a hard time with even that. It says, but you said, in what way should we turn? And then verse 8, he continues, and God says, shall a man anthropos paterni theon? Shall a man stomp on God? Anthropos, anthropology, and theon. No. Dioti imis paternizete me, ke ipate, intini epernisamen se. Otita epidecata ke e aparke meth imon isin. And he says, for you, shall a man stomp on God? Well, no, they're not. But you stomp on me. And you said, well, we stomped on you in what In what? And God answers that the tenth parts, the epidecata and the first fruits, are with you. You have them. And then verse 9, he continues, Ke apovlepontes emis apovlepete, ke ame emis paternizete. And looking away, you look away. And me, you stomp on. So they had the resources to pay the tithes and the first fruits, but they're looking away. And he's giving them an example of what they were doing that was not what they were supposed to do, was the opposite. And he's bringing his case against them, the crises. 3:10 continues. To etos sinatelesti ke isinenkate pantata ekphoria istus thesavrus ke este idiarpagi in tis ikisimon. Epistrepsate thee in tuto legi Kyrios Pantocrator, ean me anixo imin tus cataractas tu uranu, ke akeo imin tin evlogian mu, eos tu ikaноthene. The year is completed, and you carried in the resources into the storehouses, all the resources, into the thesavrus. We have a thesaurus, a repository, a storehouse, dictionary, but it's a storehouse, a repository, into the thesavrus. And there will be the ravaging in your houses, and in the ikis, houses. I mentioned economy as always has to do with houses or dwelling, and something to do with managing a house or a large building, something like that with the iki. Restore indeed in this, legi Kyrios Pantocrator. Restore, do the tithes and the first fruits. And then he says, and see if I should not open to you the torrents of the heaven. And if I should, I added the and see, but the sort of what it's intimating right here, if I should not open to you the cataractus, we have a cataracts. You can add that one in English derivatives. It's not in there, 2674:1. The torrents of the uranu, the heaven, Uranus, the planets, the derivative, and pour out to you my blessing. Evlogian, that elegy is a something somebody talks about that's good until it is enough. Here God is talking about the tenths and the first fruits with Israel, and if they would give the tenths and the first fruits and see if God would not bless them. And the tenths and the tithes are hardly mentioned in the New Testament. I'm not saying that we shouldn't give tenths or tithes, but God in the New Testament with this new covenant, from what I've seen, He wants everything. He wants our all. The problem with a lot of these laws in the Old Testament was the people not only failed, but the law was given to them because He didn't make it real difficult. But they weren't able to even do the small thing with the tenth. So in the New Testament, in this new covenant rather, Jesus talks about a lot of the laws of Moses were fulfilled. But in the new covenant with Jesus, I see that He wants everything from us, and we're not limited to tenths, which is really wonderful. You can give 100%, and I don't mean necessarily 100% of all of your money, although you can. You can spend your whole life and your whole being working for Christ instead of just doing 10% or only going to church on the Sabbath. You can go to a church and assembly every day, and you can give 100%. The new covenant opens that up, and it's an amazing covenant that God has made, and we no longer have all of these laws that the Jews had to fulfill with the washings and just all types of clean laws that people had to do in sacrifices, and we're not told to sacrifice animals in the new covenant. And so and it's talking about this, though, the people were still in that old covenant, but there is a new one coming, and that's what it's talking about. In verse 3:11, Ke diastolo imin is vrosin, ke umi diafthero, ton karpon tis gis, ke umi asthenisi, imon, I ampolos I ento agro legikirios panto krator. And I will draw apart to you for food, and in no way will I utterly destroy the fruit, the karpon of the land. The karpo is a prefix for fruit, and the geology, land. And in no way, asthenisi, should you be weakened upon your grapevine in the field, and agriculture. It says, legikirios pantokrator. Ke makariusin imas, pantata ethni, dioti esesthe imis, gi theliti, legikirios pantokrator. And all the nations shall declare you happy. The Makariusin, Jesus uses this on the Sermon on the Mount. Happy, Makarios, blessed, it says, and happy you will be if you do this and you do that. It's a word you might want to go into the lexical concordance in 3106. See all the places with the this word is used, and all the nations will declare you happy. Panta and ethnic. Theoti SS, that you will be a wanted land. Geology says, legikirios pantokrator. And 13, evarinate ep, you weigh down against. Evarin, we have a barometer, it has to do with atmospheric pressure. You weigh down against me. Ma tus logus imon legikirios, ke ipate intini katalalisam and katasu, by your words, says the Lord, legikirios. And you said, we spoke ill against you, kata, in what? 3:14, ipate mateos o thulevon theo, ke ti plion oti ephilaxamen ta philagmata aftu, ke dioti eporevthimen ikate pro prosopu kiriou pantokratoros. And you said, the one serving God is vain, theo. And what more is it that we kept? Philax, prophylactics again is the derivative, his injunctions, and that we go as supplicants before the face of Kyrios Pantokrator. 3:15. Ke nin imis makarizomen allotrius ke anikodhomunte pantas I piuntas anoma ke an testison theo ke esothison. And now we declare aliens blessed, and all the ones doing lawless deeds are built up, and they oppose God and were preserved. So they are coming against God. It's a strange way of their dealing with it, and they have this complaint that they're doing the things that God would have them to do. But yet God is still opposed to them. They have this complaint. In verse 16, Tafta katalalisan I fovumen I ton kyrion ekastos proston plesion avtu, ke proseske kyrios, ke isi kuse, ke egrapse vivlion menimosinu enopion avtu tis fovumenus, ton kyrion, ke ev lavumenis to onoma of two. Now he's changing here to the ones that are fearing the Lord. And he continues, and the ones fearing the Lord spoke these things, each to his neighbor. And the Lord heeded and hearkened. I think that could possibly be what it's talking about in 15 now that I'm thinking about it, rather than they switched the subjects here in so many places, and it's hard to figure out who's talking because it doesn't really say that, now God said this and then they said this, and goes back and forth, and from the people that were evil, and now we see here this going into the ones fearing the Lord in verse 16. So this could be in verse 15 that what they were saying for the Lord. And then it brings down who the subject is here. And the ones fearing the Lord spoke these things, each to his neighbor. And the Lord heeded and hearkened and wrote, egrapsa, we have graphic, wrote a scroll, a vivleon, a Bible as a derivative, a scroll of memorial before him, to the ones fearing the Lord and venerating his name. You can see the highlight on the scroll. That's because we have a word on the word. Pamphlet on a scroll. And there's all types of scrolls in the Bible. The Biblians were actually a name of a people, and that's where they started making these scrolls and doing writing, inventing writing, more or less of the alphabet. And they had these scrolls, and scrolls, of course, they rolled up, and they weren't leaves like in a book. And it says in Psalms 139, and on your scroll all shall be written. So God has everything written on a scroll. And to understand the scrolls, it says, and all these sayings shall be to you as the words of this scroll having set seal, which if they should give it to a man having knowledge of letters, saying, read these, then he shall say, I'm not able to read, for it is sealed. And this scroll will be given into the hands of a man not having knowledge of letters. And one shall say to him, read this, and he shall say, I do not have knowledge of letters. And in that day deaf mutes shall hear the words of the scroll, and the ones in darkness, and the ones in the fog, the eyes of the blind will see. So God writes these things in a scroll. The Bible was written in a scroll. The different books of the Bible, it goes into all this in the pamphlet or the brochure. Scrolls talks about the scroll of Jeremiah, Daniel's scroll, Nahum's scroll, the scroll of the disciple John, the scroll of Revelation. The different types of scrolls, scroll of memorial, scroll of the covenant, scroll of the law, second book of the law scroll, the war scroll, certificate of divorce scroll, scroll of the upright, scroll of properties. Then there's the history scrolls, scroll of kingship, scroll of Solomon, scroll of the kings, scroll of the days of the kings of Israel, scroll of the days of the kings of Judah, the scroll of the words of the days, the scroll of the Persians and the Medes. Then there are different peoples that had scrolls, the scroll of Moses, scroll of the matters of the kings from the days of King David, the scroll of Isaiah, Jeremiah's scroll of possession, Jeremiah's papyrus leaf scroll, and Jeremiah's second papyrus leaf scroll, which was made after the king tore it up and burned it. Ezekiel's scroll, the scroll of Artaxerxes, and Paul had scrolls. Then there are prophetic scrolls, scrolls against Babylon, scrolls of prophecy, and scrolls of seals. And then there are scrolls concerning Jesus in Psalms 40, verse 7. Then I said, behold, I come in the chapter of the scroll. It is written concerning me. And in Hebrews 10:7 it mentions that. In John 21:25 said, and there are also many other things, as much as Jesus did, which if they should be written one by one, I imagine not even the world to have space for the scroll being written. And then there's the scroll of the life of the Lamb. These are all in our brochure if you're interested. Can be downloaded freely on the internet at our website, apostolicbible.com, at the bottom under the video seminars and the word on the word. And then you go there and it has the top link scrolls. So the scroll of Mnemosyne of memorial, the ones fearing, phobia, venerating his name. And then verse 17 to the end, it says, "Ke esonte mi legi Kyrios Pantocrator is imeron in ego pio is peripisen ke aretio aftus on tropon aretizi anthropos ton ion aftu ton δουλεύον ta afto. And they shall be, or they will be to me, legi Kyrios Pantocrator, in the day, imeron, which ego po I prepare, I made. 4160, we mentioned that many times. That's my main verbs to learn. Number 1, 4160. Which I prepare for a procurement. They're being purchased by the blood of the Lamb. And I will select them in which manner a man selects, anthropology, selects his son, the one serving him. He's going to select them as a man selects his son, the one serving him. So there is a condition there that God isn't selecting the one that's not serving him. It doesn't say that. And then verse 18, Ke epistrophesis the, ke opsis the anameson dikeu ke adhiku, ke anameson δουλεύοντος theo, ke to me δουλεύοντος avto. Then you shall be turned, and you shall see between the just one and the wrongdoer, and between the one serving God and the one not serving to him. Basically, that is the key to this whole chapter. It is between the one that are wrongdoers, which God mentions all the things that they were doing, the adultery and fornication and not giving the tithes, everything, and to the one serving God and the just one. And we can be serving God, and we need to know how to serve, and by reading his word, which you are doing here, by going through this, and I am, and we can find out how to serve God better. And we'll learn even more in the next chapter when we return. Hope you will return with us, and we'll see you then. God bless.